All right. We have some changes to the college football playoff format coming in 2026. We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. All right, Jay. So there's been this big discussion of should the college football playoff expand? Should it stay at 12? The Big Ten and the SEC are the two big power brokers in that discussion. And the Big Ten wanted to go to 24. The SEC said, hey, actually, we and the Big 12 and the ACC and the Group of Five, we're actually all kind of cool with going to 16. They couldn't come to an agreement. So for 2026, we're going to stay at 12 teams.
We're sticking to 12, which makes sense. I love that the SEC stance is we'll go to 16. Let's go incremental. And then you get the Big Ten. I want to go to 24. Let's go huge and figure out how to make it work at that big. And the SEC's like, nah, stick to 16. Or we can stay at 12. I have no problem being at 12. 12 doesn't bother us. So to me, it feels like it's always going to keep rolling back to 12 until more people agree to go to around 16. I think 20 might be the max that everyone would agree with. But the Big Ten's wanting all of these guaranteed, bids and all. It's going to make it a problem. And a lot of these other conferences are like, we deserve, pieces of the pie too. Yes, the Big Ten keeps winning championships. They won the last 3, but that don't mean they're going to win them forever. Then we got to see if they're going to make an SEC run. We're only at 3. We still got time to see if that happens, but I digress from there. 12, we need to reduce it personally. I just think that we need to go less. We need to get back to 8. I think 8's probably more of a realistic number that makes sense. People can say the season's over if you don't win a certain amount of games. Right now, we're arguing about which 3-loss team deserves to be in the playoffs. You increase it, it's going to be arguing about which 4-loss team deserves to be in the playoffs. And it just doesn't make it doesn't make any sense. No one cares about the top. We only care about the last ones to get in. So we could do 25, and we're going to argue about the 26th team, right? That's just basically the nature of the beast. Yeah. So to me, I'm here for it. But seeing that the big adjustment that everyone agreed to when we went to 12, the big one that's about to come down, the biggest domino, is Notre Dame guaranteed a spot if they land in the top 12. That's going to be funny to watch coming down the line, John.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I don't understand necessarily why the conferences feel like they have to provide that for Notre Dame. I get Notre Dame has been a blue blood brand for a long, long time. They've been a historically good program. But they're just one team. They get the benefit that the 135 other teams don't get. They don't get that guarantee in the football championship or football bowl subdivision. So the fact that Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, Brett Yormark, whoever is the ACC commissioner, that they're willing to just hand that over to Notre Dame and like, yeah, top 12, you're good to go. You just make the playoff, you're fine. When Notre Dame controls their schedule, they control how difficult or how easy it's going to be, which you look at the 2026 schedule and it's not great. I mean, BYU, Miami, that's about it. Then they're not playing USC because Lincoln Riley is kind of scared, but I don't think Notre Dame's going to be sad about it because that's one less difficult team that they have to play potentially difficult. So that, man, it just seems weird that they would kind of bend the knee to Notre Dame and say, yes, you get all of what you want because you're Notre Dame, when the rest of us that are power teams and blue blood programs have to fight it out with the SEC. Michigan and Ohio State, they got to fight it out in the Big Ten to earn themselves a spot. Miami's got to fight it out in the ACC. And if you would apply this year's rules, which in 2026, it's going to be the 4 Power 4 conference champions that get an automatic bid. It doesn't matter if they're ranked high enough to get that. So in 2026, if you have an 8-5 or 8-4 Duke team that wins the ACC, they're in the playoff, which would have bumped Miami out. Based on the 2026 rules, Miami would have been out of the playoff because Notre Dame would have gotten in because they were still sitting inside the top 12.
Yep.
Duke would have gotten in.
Yep.
And you still have to put at least one group of 5 or now group of 6 team in the playoff. So these new rules would have kept national champion runner-up Miami Hurricanes out of the playoff if we used them for 2025.
Which is pretty wild to say. That's in any of them, right? You would run that same problem with any other circumstance if we were dealing with it. But that's also where things get annoying. We need to just find a structure that makes sense. Plus realizing that it's never going to truly make sense. Like it doesn't work. Not with 130 teams. You can't. Like college football was never meant to have a national championship like that. Like supposed to have all these, the AP vote their people, the coaches think whatever. You had multiple different people that would give out their titles because you had too many teams and no one can't play everybody. I mean, if you want to really do it to where it matters, just do the conference champions and have them play in a tournament and that be it. Because then in that case, you're guaranteed that, I mean, it's based upon your conference. Yes, some conferences will be tougher than others, but you can't do anything about that. It's just, it'll never be fair. And I think that's the thing is we've got to stop trying to figure out how to do it fair and just find a system that's just simple. We simplify it and get rid of all the complexities.
I think the thing I do like about this new format is that it does put an emphasis on the conference championships, because I think some of the fear and maybe some of the reluctance to go to 24 teams in a playoff is that it potentially does away with the conference title games. Well, the SEC really values their conference championship game. I think that's one of those situations that they love. And I think it's a cool game in Atlanta that SEC title game is. And so keeping the SEC championship as a valuable part of this whole structure, I think is important. Now, you're generally going to have both of those teams in the college football playoff anyway, but it doesn't minimize it. It doesn't take it away the game. If you go to 24 teams, you potentially have to get rid of it because the schedule is such an issue in college football.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more of an issue than what the college football playoff looks like, because next year you're going to be playing the national championship game on this day, January 26th in 2027. And it's ludicrous because school will have already started and the transfer portal will already have come and gone. It doesn't make any sense to go this deep into January trying to play college football. They've got to get that figured out before they even consider expanding again, because how are you going to fit a 16-team playoff, a 24-team playoff into the current schedule structure? It's not going to work.
It don't work. The playoffs need to be done January 1. We've got to figure out how to do it like all the other ones. D2 do it, D3 do it. Figure out how to do it that way. We should be done January 1 or at the latest playoff weekend for the NFL. You don't want to compete with them, fine. Put the national championship on a Friday night right before the NFL playoffs start. Be done with it. Saturday night will be the best. You probably make way more money that way, but do it on a Friday night. Monday night sucks.
Yeah,
Friday night.
That's terrible.
Be done with it.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
A lot of changes. It's an ever-evolving landscape that is college football, and it's constantly going to be changing. And I kind of hope we don't get to 24. I think 12 feels right. Arguing over 10-win teams at least feels reasonable, right? Because a 10-win season means
double
something.
digit.
It means something to coaches. It means something to programs. It means something. An 8-win team making a playoff like Duke would have, or a 9-win team, arguing over that kind of stuff, it just doesn't feel the same way. So
It's so terrible.
you gotta keep it to where these things still mean something, and making the playoff is still really hard to do. You make it 24 teams and it's not going to be as hard, and it's not going to be as valuable when you're talking about the 24th best team making the playoff. It just doesn't. Yeah, it's gross. So anyway, all right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check him out at Unfair Sports. You can follow me at John 9 Williams and read my work covering the Sooners at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.
That's not the right one. That's the right one.